You see so much in the private sector. You're innovating the technologies that are going to help with a future national security mission. I wanted to start off with you by talking about these increasingly sophisticated AI attacks, and I think Sandra just laid a really great, groundwork for us to pick up on. When we're looking at the sophistication of these attacks, David, what are you thinking about the future?
That's a great question. First, I want to thank you for putting on this event. It's been a great 2 days, and we've been doing it for 4 years, and look forward to doing it in the future. Looking into the future, that's a really great question, because I don't know if any of us can actually imagine what the future is going to look like. We're just at the start of this thing called AI. Well, AI has been around for many years, but we're just at this inflection point where the threats, the convergence of the threats, the technology, the price points are allowing for this to really become, I think someone said earlier, ChatGPT is 3 or 4 years old. And so we're still crawling with this. And so what this looks like 2, 3, 4 years from now is it's a really tough question, because I think we have to reimagine everything that is our norms of today, of how threats are evolving, how we deal with threats. And I think the key right now is to figure out how we're going to accept AI, take on AI, and start using it to allow us to create that future for ourselves.
We're kind of like mapping the environment while fighting the battle at the same time, aren't we?
We're on the bus, it's going 55 miles an hour, and we got to figure out how to change the tire at the same time.
Yeah. So let's talk just a little bit about the future of technological innovation. When it comes to things like partnerships and allies, we heard General Nakasone talking earlier about the introduction of academia as a more consistent partner in some of these things. You, AWS, and multiple other leading companies are already working together on several initiatives. How are you thinking about the future of this, particularly with U.S. allies and those who share the same sort of value system?
Yeah, so, it's been great conversations the last couple of days, and I was taking a lot of notes, and the way we're thinking about this is kind of, I broke it down into 4 areas to kind of think through a little bit. One is the infrastructure, which is sort of the basic layer, and there's obviously a lot of stuff in the press over the last few months about a lot of investments in GPUs and data centers, but that's just the starting point. And AWS alone has done a lot of that for the last 15 years. We operate 4 top secret regions for the government, 1 secret, another secret region coming online, as well as GovCloud. But having the data centers and the GPUs is just the start. We've talked a little bit as well about education. We have to do a much better job of educating our operators, the people that acquire, people that are going to consume AI, so they can trust it, that they know how to use it and they can trust it. We've committed to training over 20 million people globally on the cloud and AI. And we've also recently kicked off a pilot with Virginia Tech National Security Institute and their core cadets to start training future military leaders and future students that have already committed to go into civil service about the power of the cloud and the AI. Infrastructure, education, and then there's the partner ecosystem. And there's a lot of discussion about that and innovation. What we find fascinating is not only helping partners to get to the cloud and start to use AI and how they develop next generation systems and better outcomes for their customers, but we have over 100,000 partners within the AWS ecosystem across all industries, all markets. 90% of the problems are the same. It's that's my wet finger in the air. The last 10%, that last mile, is where things become really different. So the amount of interactions we have where we have organizations like the PGA Tour talking to the intelligence community, and they're learning from each other on simple things that are related to targeting, tracking a golf ball, figuring out where it's going to land, what to do with it. I was just at the Formula One race this past week. A Formula One car collects 1.1 million data points per second, when the difference in winning and losing is 0.3 seconds. So how do you get to data to decisions faster? Those are things that we can learn from other industries and bring back to national security and defense, and that's the things that we work a lot with our partner ecosystem. And then finally is just getting to the mission services themselves. And a lot of talk already, we have to move away from requirements and get to better outcomes. Turn on that innovation, let companies like AWS and others then go solve the problems. If the problems get dictated to us or the requirements get dictated, we've just stifled innovation.
I'm really glad you brought up the F1 example, because one thing that we've heard repeatedly as well over the last couple of days is speed, right? And while the private sector is probably positioned for speed, the government is not. But the government is your partner in this. So how are you thinking about being able to bring some of these solutions and build some of these infrastructures, create some of these environments faster?
Well, the key is ruthless leadership top down. Finding use cases and then driving them. Not trying to boil the ocean. And where we've seen success in the IC and the DoD and across the government is when there's that ruthless top-down leadership that says we are going to go do it, and we're going to take the risk, and we're going to accept the failure, but we're going to learn from it. And that's where we've seen a lot of success. We're not just driving costs down and better customer satisfaction, but real mission outcomes that have improved, whether it's surveillance, whether it's predictive maintenance, whatever it may be. When that happens from top down, great things happen.
Are there specific areas in sort of ruthless top-down where you feel like that philosophy could be applied right now that might bring some quick benefit to the national security mission in any one particular area?
We've talked a lot about them already in the last couple of days. We're spending a lot of time in autonomous systems, how to use AI, and I think General Petraeus might have mentioned it, how to get AI to work across drones where they start to communicate to each other, they learn from each other, they take actions from each other. In predictive maintenance, an interesting one is how do you do predictive maintenance on a nuclear submarine? And how do you keep and that's a tough problem from a physics perspective, not just the nuclear side of it, but you can't see inside the walls of a nuclear submarine. And so how do you use AI and Gen AI and other things to predict when things might happen so you can actually keep the submarine at sea longer when there's only so many submarines? One that we are starting, though, that actually really interests me is we have a lot of legacy command and control systems, a lot of great command and control systems, but they were, I think General Petraeus again said they were built for different types of threats or built over many decades. We're not going to probably build a brand new single command and control system in the sky for all of DoD. We can start to use Agentic AI to work across those systems. How to get agents to talk from one system to the next and how to then get new insights and make decisions faster or take decisions on their own depending on what the use case may be. I think that's an area where I think we'll see a lot of interest in the next time frame.
I can't even imagine the scope of your responsibilities and your role at AWS, but what do you wake up thinking about in the morning and go to bed thinking about at night?
Are we delivering for our customers? And we have to. We're customer obsessed. And every day, it's what are we doing to help our warfighters, our operators in the field, because that's what it's all about. We have a lot of our employees are former government employees or warfighters, and just dedicated to making sure that we understand the problems and the challenges they have, working with them, and making sure we're delivering solutions, innovative solutions, things that we like to say 90% of what we do is what our customers ask of us. The other 10 to 20% is what we anticipate they're going to ask us. And so that's the innovation culture that we have, and we think about that every day.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about interoperability that you talked about in sort of data sharing. I think you mentioned trust as being kind of a key area where we've got to be able to come together and trust the systems, trust the data. How do we get there fast enough? I'm going to layer on one more thing, which is, once again, speed.
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to a little bit I was talking about before. You got to lay down some of the foundations like education, and you got to start with those use cases. And we have to start this mindset that we're gonna do it, not why we're not. And if we start to have those use cases and we start to see the successes, it creates a flywheel where it just takes on a life of its own. From an interoperability standpoint, the cloud allows us to do a lot of that across organizations within the government. As we're building out cloud infrastructure in our allies and partner nations, it allows for better connectivity when appropriate. It gets to some common standards. There are some uniquenesses between what each country may do from a sovereign perspective. But the technology itself is also allowing us to even communicate better. So we have a service called AWS Wickr, which we recently used in a NATO exercise. We're simply being able to communicate. Someone can talk in German into their kit, and it's automatically being translated to English for the U.S. forces, and they can operate seamlessly. And so the technology is allowing things to happen just at a much faster pace.
It's really incredible how much the world has changed in the last few years, mostly driven on AI. As you're imagining the future, it's sort of a lot of doom and gloom, I know it feels like. when we're talking about the nature of the threats, because they're very serious and the impacts are very real. But we are also looking for those sort of bright spots. Where do you think some of those bright spots are coming from?
I think, I'll give you some non-classified examples or national security examples.
You can do whatever you want.
I can't give the ones out that I really know about. But I think about like in the healthcare area. We work with the Allen Brain Institute, and they are mapping the human brain. That'll be the first time that's ever done. And think about the discoveries that'll come out of that, from how the brain operates to identify diseases or find cures faster. We're working with them. We're working with the NFL on traumatic brain injury and collaborating then with Special Operations Command to how does that impact breachers. We're working with the FDA to get drugs to market faster and identifying new drugs that can come to market. The AI is accelerating all that at such a rapid pace. We're taking things down that used to take years, if not decades, down to years or months or days or weeks. It's just fascinating what's happening. Okay,
so here's the super scary part. The adversary is doing that too,
yep.
But they're doing it in the areas that maybe aren't as beneficial to humankind. What are you most worried about right now in terms of the competition with China in particular on the technology side?
My biggest worry is that we don't let our bureaucracy get in the way. Because the adversaries don't play by the same rules. They don't have the same bureaucracy. They don't have the same oversight. They don't have the same norms that we do. And so it gets back to we have to start. And we like to say the best day to start was yesterday. The next best day is today. And if we don't start today, we're going to get left behind. I've seen a more accelerated approach to AI over the last year than I did probably the previous 3 or 4 years before that. We got to take down some of the bureaucracy to get going and start with these use cases.
How are you seeing the future of partnerships? Because the culture it's not just the bureaucracy, it's also clearly the culture that's changing. I think it's already changed. I think there would have been a time where you would host a conference like this and certain companies wouldn't want to be on a stage with other companies, and we don't have that anymore. I think it's fantastic to see the level of cooperation and partnership coming together. And we talked a little bit when we first sat down about allies. Well, how are you seeing this picture come together about the future that needs to happen in order for us to be able to compete with U.S. adversaries on national security?
I think it was it might have been last year or the year before at this conference. From a national security and defense perspective, we absolutely have to operate as a nation, make it a nation like imperative, which means industries need to cooperate and work together on common problems, and we're starting to see that. We need to do more of that, but again, it comes down to creating the right environments for allow us to do that, and the government has a role in that as well.
What is it? I think one of the most fascinating things about having the industry leaders on stage is, you don't hear a lot in the press unless you're reading sort of the press releases, but in the regular news about what you're seeing, what you're doing. There are reports released that are very insightful, and a lot of time is spent on those. I don't think the average American is reading those reports. If you could pull a few key things from what AWS is doing or what it knows right now that you would want the average American to understand to better know where we're headed with national security, what would some of those key things be?
Ooh. I'm very optimistic on where we are as a country and what we do. And I think with applying the technology that we now have to some of those problems and the things the government's been doing for decades is just going to continue to position us in a very good place. I feel safe and secure at night knowing what I know and knowing what things are being worked on. I also am encouraged that people are thinking about the tough problems, not just of today, but of tomorrow and what's coming 3, 4, 5 years from now. We talk a lot about AI and cyber today. What about, I think we'll be talking about quantum here pretty soon. And some of us started talking about quantum a few years ago, but quantum is the next, and so these things are being discussed behind closed doors, and we're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Can we talk about that a little bit for a minute? Because I feel like that's the sort of forgotten about topic with all the other AI and everything else that we're talking about is quantum and the future. It's still very important. It still matters what's the right way to phrase it? Who gets quantum first? I mean, right. Who's able to break these codes before everybody else? When you think about and I asked General Nakasone the question earlier, when you think about who's winning, which is a super simple question, but I feel like it translates to most people much quicker if you can ask a simple question. What is the complicated answer when it comes to China, the US, national security? How do you know who's winning? Like, what are some of the indicators that you look for in the data to think about where we stand between government and private sector and in China and communist community?
I think from, I don't know if I have any hard data to share right now, but I think we're doing, as a country, a very good job with AI. However, I fear that as we continue to have political discussions and governance discussions and guardrail discussions, which are all very important, and we need to sort through that. But if we're not sorting through that in parallel with using, is where we'll fall behind, because China and others are just diving right in. And that's the challenge we have.
It kind of reminds me of the conversation earlier when General Petraeus said, sometimes, or maybe it was one of the other brilliant panelists up here who said sometimes you work with a 60% solution to get to what you need to do. And do you feel like that's kind of where we are with AI right now?
I think we're probably north of 60%, but it is something yes, I think that's where we are. We have to start using it, and the previous discussion from Google was fantastic about guardrails in the large language models. For example, we've also have something called Bedrock, which is our managed service to get to various large language models, whether they're AWS's or others, which provides additional guardrails. The point is we're all having to have the understanding that, yes, we need guardrails, but let's accept that we're going to operate within them and not try to get to the 100% answer.
Yeah. Do you think, and I'm asking you all these look into the crystal ball questions up here, and I appreciate you being such a great sport about it. I'm wondering if you're seeing the change in technology over the next 10 years to be as rapid as it has been over the last 10. There's the curve that I think a lot of us have seen about technology and the development of technology, and it's kind of exponential. I think it's just going straight line now. The pace of change, and even the pace of change that AI will allow us to have in new technology advancements is I don't know if anybody has what that crystal ball looks like, but it's what we see today, and if we have this discussion 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I think we will be, oh my gosh, we never would have anticipated that. Okay, what are some of the other things in your notes that we haven't talked about?
I think we've got most of them, but yeah.
That's a new question I've never asked anyone before. Okay, I really appreciate, again, kind of you talking about how you see this new ecosystem evolving, and especially I think the interoperability, which is something that's come up through, honestly, almost every session in one way or another that we've had. Any kind of closing thoughts that you want to leave us with when you're thinking about both the possibilities and the risks?
I think this is just something on both possibilities and risk, that between industry, government, education, I think General Nakasone was sort of touching on earlier, we have all got to come together and work on it together. We can't do it in stovepipes. There are a lot of great examples where that's happening, but we need to make it at scale. And I'm just excited. Thank you for having us.
One more really specific question, maybe kind of curveball, but General Nakasone also spoke about the need for talent. And kind of, we've heard this talked about with a lot of folks in government for a while. DoD has actually done this several times, where they're rotating people through. They're bringing people from the private sector in. I'm just kind of curious about your thoughts on that. Is that an effective model as we think about changing our ecosystem for the future and sharing information?
Absolutely, and we're a supporter of that. And there are efforts underway to go explore that even further, not just from an Amazon perspective. I know the government's thinking about that, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I'm a product of going to school on my previous employer for 4 or 5 months at the National Defense University, and there's other programs like that. And anytime you can get industry embedded with the government and vice versa, which I think is something also that it should not just be industry going into government, but government coming into industry. It creates, again, another flywheel for better understanding of how things work, exchanging of ideas, bringing innovation both ways. I think we got to really explore that more as a nation. Are you finding more now that people are speaking the same language when they do that? I mean, because before there were big cultural differences. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that's really important. Even when I think about the cloud, I was having this discussion with somebody this morning. The cloud has become a generic term, and I think a lot of people make statements about the cloud without actually understanding what it is. Not all cloud is the same. I'm not going to say one cloud is better than the other, maybe. But the reality is all clouds are different. And so when we're making decisions, we need to understand actually what we're talking about. And so getting people to have that understanding, that common language, if there's any Brits still in the room, we are truly separated by common languages. And that happens within the US as well.
Yeah. Wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you.